Vi är Spelskaparna.
So welcome to Spelskaparna, James Vaughan.
Hi there.
And you're the creator of Plague Inc. and Rebel Inc.
Yes.
So let's start off with, could you describe what is Plague Inc. about?
Yep, sure. So Plague Inc. is a infectious disease simulation game. It's not a very nice game. The player is trying to spread their disease and infect the whole world with it and then kill everybody. It's a realistic game model. It's a game I actually made 7 years ago, and it's been at the top of the App Store charts ever since. So we've got 120 million players of it now.
That's crazy.
It's great. Even saying it doesn't really feel like it makes sense. But it's a game I originally made as a hobby. I used to be a management consultant and I wanted to do something a bit different, and I would like playing games, so I thought, oh, maybe I'll try and make a game in my spare time. So spent a year working on Plague Inc., found a few contractors to do the tech and art that I couldn't do, and then we released it. And yeah, within about an hour of it releasing, it made its development cost back, and then it let me take I took a leave of absence from my old job to kind of keep focusing on it, because it was like rocketing up the charts at that point, and like, oh shit, I need to do all these updates, I need to add more stuff to it.
So what made it spread?
I think it was a very unique game. It's a game which requires people to think about things a bit, and most games on the App Store are maybe not quite as in-depth simulation based as Plague Inc. was. So it spread purely through word of mouth. It spread virally like an infectious disease game. But people were wanting a high-quality premium game which kind of worked very well on mobile and let them think about things in a different way. There was a Flash game called Pandemic, which I don't know if you're aware of from a long time ago now.
No, I know about the board game.
Oh no, this is unrelated to the board game. There's a Flash game called Pandemic, which was actually one of the key inspirations for me with Plague Inc. I played Pandemic when I was thinking about I want to try and make a game, and I thought, well, this game's good, but it could be so much better. So that's when I sort of started all the ideas about things to do and change and adding more narrative to it and stuff. And so yeah, so it woke. I didn't announce the game to anybody. I was on holiday in Ireland, and I didn't really know how the App Store worked or anything. So it released. I woke up and like, oh shit, it's already released. So I jump out of bed and I'm looking at it, and already before I'd even woken up, hundreds of people had found the game and had started playing it and telling their friends about it. It was number one in the charts a few days later, and it's stayed in the top 5 of the charts for 7 years now, which is, we've been crazy.
That's amazing.
I think. So yeah, we've got it on iPhone and Google Play. Obviously, we did a PC version of it, which is Plague Inc. Evolved, which we've also now put onto Xbox and PlayStation, and that was sort of an enhanced version of the game with lots of extra features, etc. And I've also made a board game version of it, which was quite a nice kind of design creative challenge, quite different to making a digital game. But actually, we've just kick-started an expansion for that, which finished on Monday. So I'm still keeping that going as well. I've thrown a lot of stuff at you there.
Yeah. So I was thinking about like most of the people that I interview are like either programmers or maybe artists.
Yep.
But you actually weren't any of that when you started off.
Correct.
So how did you manage to, like, practically to get it made?
So I think I made Plague Inc. is a game which is perfectly tailored to my strengths. Like it's not particularly heavy on the art. It's not particularly heavy on tech. The power of it is the algorithms and how the algorithms work together to present a realistic world, and also to tell a story through it. I always call it algorithmic game design. I'm using these long formula and algorithms to try and tell a story to people. And so that was all stuff I could do myself. So I needed to have an artist to actually make the UI and sort of have the graphics that we did need. I found a contractor to do that, and I needed a proper tech person, because I can kind of do bastard programming where I could be in a file and I can program my algorithms, but I can't create the engine itself. So I was very lucky was I found a guy called Mario from the Czech Republic, and he was amazing and handled all of the tech side of things. So the way I always describe it to non-games people is it's as if I got Mario, my tech guy, he built me a sandpit, and I went into the sandpit and built a sand castle. And the sand castle was what we sold and what the game is, but I could never have built my sand castle without somebody who built the framework and the game engine around me to support that. So I do like to get my hands. Well, I think for me, I have to really get my head into the algorithms, and so it's a case of sort of you're coding stuff, you're tweaking it, you're saying, oh, what if I change this variable slightly? If I add in a whole new mutation mechanic, how might that spread and grow and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and polish and polish and polish and polish and iterate and keep going like that.
So what's the background for the model of how the?
So it's based on real world disease models. I like to collect knowledge wherever I can. So it's a case of read as much as you can, talk to as many people as you can, really kind of scrape in the knowledge. I did economics at university, so I have a vague understanding of building models and how to get what you want out of them. But the important thing was I was making a game first and foremost. It had to be fun. So we start with reality and then tweak it and adjust it if necessary to make sure it's still a fun game. But I was still able to capture the realistic elements of it, and the game is played by people all over the world, doctors, university lecturers. They all sort of comment on how it can be used to actually educate people, even though I didn't design it for that. I was even invited to America, but to visit the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. They flew me out there to talk to them about how Plague Inc. can be used to educate and inform people about infectious disease. So that was awesome going to the CDC actually, because obviously I just make a game about it. These guys are living and breathing this stuff all the time. And that's one of the joys about making a realistic game, I think, is that you do kind of get all these side benefits. I mean, obviously the fact I'm in Stockholm at the moment is because my latest game, Rebel Inc., which is an insurgency simulator, I've been invited here by the Swedish Peace Institute, and they have a forum once a year where they have people from all over the world coming to talk about peace and stabilization development issues, and they wanted me to come and do a talk about Rebel Inc. and how Rebel Inc. can make people think about stabilization. It's another benefit of tapping into real-world game design.
So now when you have been here in Stockholm with Rebel Inc., what have people that are not interested in games at all? What are their reactions?
They're really the talk I did yesterday went really well. It was 20 minutes of talk followed by 40 minutes of questions from the audience, so that's always a good sign when you have more questions from the audience than talking. I think it was people. A lot of them don't play games, but a lot of them are interested in how it can be used for training, so to reinforce concepts that they're trying to get across when they're out in the field and stuff, and also just making people think about the issues. Like we have a lot of players who send messages and say, "Oh, now I understand why Afghanistan's so complicated, why we've been bogged down there for so long." Like one of the key things I wanted to do with Rebel Inc. was highlight the issues and the complexity of these situations, and I was really pleased with how people were responding to it actually yesterday. It was awesome. Because again, same kind of thing as the CDC. These guys are the experts who know what they're talking about. So if they think it's good how I've done it and presented it, I'm quite pleased with that.
But what's the resources that you have gone to, like scientific articles or?
For Plague Inc. or for Rebel Inc.?
Okay. Let's stay with Plague Inc. since we started there. So,
so it was yes, scientific articles, reading. I mean, even Wikipedia on how diseases spread. You very quickly get to the concept of a basic reproduction rate, which is how many people can be infected by one infected person, and as that number goes higher, more and more people are infected by it. So that was the core algorithm, was that basic reproduction rate. In Plague Inc. you start with one infected person. If you evolve certain new symptoms like sneezing, you increase the infectivity. That increases it, more people get infected, turn after turn after turn, and it kind of you start with some real world elements, and then kind of it organically spreads out from that. You're like, right, okay, I've got the infection algorithms in, now I need to start thinking about how diseases mutate and how that mutation can change and shift things around.
But this was your first game. You had like no
Correct.
previous
Correct.
experience.
Well, so looking back, having done Plague Inc., I can now see. When I was little, I used to play a game called Age of Wonders 2. Have you ever come across that game?
I know about it.
Made by Triumph Studios. But I love that game, and I spent a lot of time making maps and stuff for that when I was a teenager. And in retrospect, a lot of the things I did there were quite helpful for me when making my own game, because obviously using an editor, it's still kind of cheating a little bit, but it still has some of the same creative aspects and angles to it. But you know, I had never made a game before, so I got quite lucky with my first one.
Yeah. But I find it interesting because it's quite a different approach.
We definitely do not take a standard approach to game design.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's much more of a kind of a brute force kind of. With Rebel Inc. especially, I'll bang my head against the desk repeatedly until something comes out of my ears and I can scoop that up and put it in the game. It's definitely I talk to lots of other developers and stuff, and it's definitely a different way of doing it. Yeah. And I mean, that's good, as obviously it's worked very well for us, but at the same time it makes it harder to scale the company. And that's something. I've been looking for another game designer to work with me on Plague Inc. and stuff, and I'm really struggling to find the right kind of person for that, because it is quite a different game to the normal games that are made, and B, we have quite a different approach to how it's handled. And now we've got Rebel Inc. as well. We've got 2 games sort of that are live and ongoing, and we need to keep updating both of them and maintaining them, and that's quite challenging to do.
But when you started off, then you had the contractors, and you were collaborating with them,
yes,
like through Skype or anything similar?
So Mario, my original tech guy, his English was very good written, but we couldn't really talk to each other, so it was all over text communications.
Also very unusual.
For a year, I know, it was absolutely crazy in retrospect.
But have you kept it that way when you made the Rebel Inc.?
No, so Mario is still involved, and he was very involved in the early days, but he's less involved than he used to be. He handles a lot of our server-side stuff and sort of general research rather than everything else. But then also we have, I've grown the company since then, so there's about 7 of us now who work out in Bristol. And those are, so we've got tech people and an artist and a producer, so we're slowly growing in order to let us do more bits and pieces.
How do you experience the difference now when you have the team really close to you, and also that you can talk to them and not only use written text?
It's definitely helpful. It's a way of growing more towards a more formal company. It means that we've got people on site. For the conference I was at today, we needed some flyers and stuff. So I was just say to the art team, hey guys, can you just quickly pull together a flyer so we can get it printed? So having people on site is definitely useful. I think in the early days I was quite concerned about growing the company too soon, so it took me about a year before I hired my first employees, just because all too often I think there are stories of people who make a game, it does well, they hire loads of people and rent out a palace for their office somewhere, costs go through the roof, and then they struggle to replicate the success, or they don't have the success sort of at a level that justifies the costs. And with Plague Inc., it's always been such an unusual game, like it's ridiculous that it's still at the top of the charts 7 years later. I kind of have to assume that each day will be its last day before it collapses off the charts. So I didn't want to incur a lot of costs unnecessarily. But now, especially also now that we've released Rebel Inc. and Rebel Inc. has done well as well, that kind of gives me more confidence to kind of grow the studio more aggressively going forwards. I mean, Rebel Inc. was never going to do as well as Plague Inc. Nothing was going to do as well as Plague Inc. But Rebel Inc. we've got 4 million players of Rebel Inc. and it's been out now for 4 months or something. So it's been done well enough that I can see a sustainable way to grow the company from those games as well. Okay, interesting. So your goal now is to grow a bit. Yes, well, not excessive. I would like to. For me, I need to find a really good game designer who can grow the company with me, because I am a bottleneck at the moment. I am as the creative person who's doing the game design stuff, I'm spread across Plague Inc., I'm spread across Rebel Inc., I've got my Plague Inc. board game that I need to work on as well. There's only so much I can, because we need to keep on adding updates to the game. The only reason why Plague Inc. has stayed around at the charts for so long is because we constantly add new updates to it. We add new content, and that's what keeps us alive. It's games as a service, I guess, is now. But back in 2012, we need to do updates. Yeah, so we need to work. We need to constantly release updates, add new content to them, and that's what's really worked well. Actually, I remember Plague Inc. was beginning to come down the charts, and then we pushed out the first major content update, which was like a mind controlling worm, and it took us right back up the charts again. And each kind of update we did, it knocks us up the charts another tick and keeps us at the top of the charts for even longer.
And that is also something that you sell in the game.
Yes, it's sold. So there is a way for particularly enthusiastic players to unlock it for free. If they can beat the whole game on brutal, they get the content for free. But the expectation is that people will pay for these expansions, because they are basically expansions. And the players really respond well to it. Like we've spent a lot of effort making very high quality content, and people enjoy it. They recommend it to friends. They're happy that there's this option to pay for it. It was always a big concern of mine initially, was, are we going to be able to make people pay for additional content? Because especially in the industry these days, there's a lot of the time the in-app purchases and stuff, they're not necessarily something you feel good about buying. They're forced on you, and they're a bit slimy and stuff.
Usually the consumables.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of consumable in-app purchase. I think from a business point of view, it's very clever. From a game design point of view, I think it encourages bad game design habits because it's so tempting to try and shape everything to push more consumable in-app purchases. We're in the lucky position where we're a small company, our costs are very low, so we don't have to. We don't have sort of shareholders who we owe, who we sort of have a responsibility to. So we're able to be more relaxed about our monetization, and we focus purely on making games that we want to play and that we can be proud of. And to date, we've been able to achieve that.
Nice. And the game designer that you're looking for, so what kind of profile would that be? Maybe someone is listening right now.
Yeah, well, if they are, definitely. I'll buy you a beer if somebody comes from this, or maybe even two. No, I think it's somebody who has probably worked in strategy simulation games before, and sees something like Plague Inc. and now like Rebel Inc. and thinks, that's awesome, I'd love to be working on sort of games which have a sort of heavy algorithmic element to it. That's a key focus for me. So anybody who plays Plague Inc. or Rebel Inc. and wants to make games like that and thinks ideally they think they can do a better job than me. That'd be even better if they can. That's definitely something I'm keen to do. I would like to work on potentially on a more city buildery, survival builder kind of game at some point as well. So people who've done that's also very interesting for me.
Have you visited Paradox when you've been here in Stockholm?
Yep, I had lunch with Fred West early on today, actually.
Nice.
Yes. No, while I was over in Stockholm, I wanted to sort of get in touch with all the people who I sort of know and say hi to them properly. So that was good. Bumped into met Felix from Polytopia, who I think you've had on this podcast as well. So it was a good excuse to be here and say hi. Now I've met you as well, so it's all
awesome.
all worked out quite well there.
And we have talked a little bit about Rebel Inc. before, but can you go more into depth, like what's the actual gameplay? What do you do?
Sure. So Rebel Inc. has a lot of similarities with Plague Inc. in that it's an algorithmic game based on a real-world complex issue, but it focuses on simulating an insurgency in a war-torn country. So think somewhere like Afghanistan, and it puts the player in the shoes of a national operation with foreign coalition assistance. And the thing I wanted to do was get players thinking about the complexities and difficulties in stabilizing a country and ensuring peace there. Like all too often, I think people can think, oh, you just need to think about military stuff and send lots of people to shoot things and it will all be okay. Absolutely not. So other times people think, oh, you don't need military stuff at all. You just need to focus on development and providing services and it will all be okay. Nope, if you can't provide security, you're going to have an unpleasant, nasty shock. So it's kind of, it's balancing the military aspects, the civilian aspects, thinking about, we model corruption in there, we model inflation, all these various socioeconomic factors also need to be considered. And it all comes together rather well, actually. I'm quite proud of it. And again, once you have a realistic world model, you start getting emerging gameplay, which is fascinating. So we had a beta tester try to play the game in our office, and it was too hard. Like, oh, this is outrageous. Da, 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 da. So they cheated and gave themselves a load of extra money to try and win the game that way. However, I've modelled inflation in the game, so they spent a fuckload of money, inflation went through the roof, and all their efforts were wasted, and they lost the game anyway, because inflation made everything more expensive, it made people angry, etc., etc. So I was quite pleased with that. And it just gets people thinking about it. We have people messaging in saying, oh, now I understand a bit more about why we've been over in Afghanistan so long.
Okay, let's wait it out.
You're going to have to do a lot of editing.
Yeah, no worries. So what's the dinner tonight?
It's one of the peace forums.
Ah, okay.
So
okay.
It's quite good actually, because it gives me an opportunity to meet people who actually know a lot of the stuff about this, and so I've already got like a booklet of things I've been writing down, like ideas, vignettes to put in. When I was working on Rebel Inc., I reached out to a lot of experts and did a lot of research. So I had people like the Afghan ambassador to the UK sharing some stories from when they were last in Afghanistan and things they think they should go in the game, and having people who've actually spent time out there in places like Afghanistan, Iraq. It adds flavour and colour that I can never get by reading some articles and reading a few books and stuff. So really talking to experts and people who live there is really, really useful.
But is the like your model for Rebel Inc. Is it biased towards any particular like politics?
No, we really try to keep it very neutral from politics. We never say.
Must be hard. I mean,
yes. Well, yes, and I mean it's such a contentious. The whole issue is so contentious and sensitive. We had to be so careful to make sure we weren't sort of glamorizing violence or sort of exploiting a serious situation. Or exploiting a serious situation, and I think we manage that actually, but it's because we take a very macro view of the region. Like we're not looking at individual people. We're zoomed out. We're not saying why this war has happened. We don't say anything about the politics of the insurgents.
But I guess politics is a lot about the things that you do in the game, I presume, like how you manage the resources.
Yes, there is that to an extent, but we try and let players use their imagination to flavour things and to colour things and to make their own inferences and stuff about it. And I think that we do that with Plague Inc. as well. Like by having quite a simple graphical interface, we're not ramming everything down players' throats. We're letting them use their imaginations, and so yeah, they can colour things as they want to. They can put their own inferences on them. They can think about things their own way, so. I want to make a game that is fun, so we do have to make certain changes to realism and sacrifices to realism in order to make sure the game is fun, but also that if you try to tell people too much stuff, it's all obscured and people can't understand what you're trying to show them. So an example I always give is like it's the London Tube map. Like the London Tube map isn't actually geographically accurate. We used to have, you read this. It used to be geographically accurate, and people couldn't really understand it. So they did a stylized fictional version, and they used that, and people can understand the real truth better from this stylized fictional London Tube map than they could from the geographically accurate one. And that's also what I tend to do with my games. Is is work out which things do you need to remove or simplify in order to help people understand the core truths better. Because there's always a temptation, I think, with realistic games or with sort of serious games, is that you've got to ram everything in, and it just doesn't work. And that's also what's interesting for the CDC with Plague Inc. and with the Stockholm Peace Institute here. It's that sometimes you have to hold things back so that people can actually understand stuff. Yeah,
that's a really great analogy, and I think like that's kind of the problem that you're solving when you're creating the game. Like, how do I make the subway map?
Exactly, and which bits do you tweak and which bits do you remove, and then, oh wait, the corruption mechanism aren't really working properly at the moment, let's try something else, or I'm not happy with the time scale on which foreign soldiers have to be withdrawn, so maybe if we add a few extra multipliers in, that could be good. But you're always battling against complexity, because for me, having games be accessible is very important. I always like the concept of opt-in complexity. Like, have games that people can choose to opt into extra complexity if they want to, but I want non-gamers to be able to play my games. So that makes things even harder, of course, is that you're having to not only have a fun game, it's also got to be sensitive and realistic, it's also got to be accessible, and you've got to be able to make money from selling it as well. So you've got all these different competing elements and priorities and stuff. But so far, it's worked out well for us.
Okay. And what kind of processes do you use to verify that it is accessible enough, or it is like the simulation is like you want it to be, and that kind of stuff?
So we a lot of testing. So for the simulation being accurate enough and feeling fun, I mean, I design games for myself, so I'm my own target audience, which makes things very easy, because if I like it, that's all that matters. But from an accessibility point of view, I always test on people who don't really play games. I never really test on gamers, because when you test on people who don't really play games, it really exaggerates and highlights the feedback. They will give the same kind of feedback maybe that a gamer would be thinking, but the non-gamers actually say it, and it's really obvious what they're thinking, in a way that gamers maybe who are more used to things, they'll kind of just manage with a slightly confusing interface or something. So I do like to, I mean, most of my friends don't play games, so it gives me, I've got a huge source of testing people that I can kind of, I can test on and experiment on with them. So I think lots of testing, lots of iteration, and really focusing on negativity. I love negativity. I always want testers to be as horrible to me as possible about it. I always say to them, if you can make me cry, that's a bonus. No one's ever made me cry yet with the feedback they give me. But really sort of get them to play it and ask for feedback, and then at the end, like, before you go, I want you to give me 5 negative things about the game. Even if they said they love it and it's wonderful, come on, think of 5 things, 5 bad things, and you've got to really like tease that negativity out of them. You're like, oh, give me one more nasty thing you don't like. What's the worst thing? What's the thing you think I should change? Like, and I'm not necessarily going to change things on what they're based, but it's all extra data points that I can use to kind of shape things of the game.
I find it really interesting how you combine like the initial game ideas you have done are really complex. Like you try to model something that's really complex.
Yeah, it's a stupid thing to make a game of.
Yeah, but then and that you also have this like accessibility focus, because like there are other simulation games like Dwarf Fortress, where it's completely different in regards to like the accessibility.
I guess it's different markets. I mean, I think because I designed for smartphones initially and then bring it to the PC afterwards, that is also a focus. You have a limited UI on a smartphone, so again, that actually helps me focus on accessibility, because I've got all these different cool things I want to add to it, but I can't show them all on the screen. So therefore, I'm going to have to cut some of them out and really focus on what matters.
So what is your drive for making games?
It's making games that I enjoy playing. Like, the reason why I made Plague Inc. originally was because I played Pandemic, and I thought I could make a better game than that. There aren't many games, especially on mobile, that are the kind of game I like to play. I want to play intelligent, smart games that make me think. I like strategy games. I do not like the typical free-to-play strategy game. So I feel I'm quite underserved in the market. So that's why I make games, and it turns out there's actually quite a large niche of people who feel the same way that I do and want the kind of games I make. But it's important to remember that these are tiny, we do operate in a tiny niche. Like, we're in the premium side of things. After, we're probably one of the, Plague Inc. is probably one of the top 5 most downloaded paid games ever on mobile. Now, you've got Minecraft way above everyone else, but then you've got us, Angry Birds, Heads Up and stuff. But we're a tiny niche in the market, and none of all the big companies, they don't care about serving that niche, because for them they've got to be chasing the big free-to-play market. So we're a very big fish in a tiny pond, and you've got the Atlantic Ocean sitting next to us, which is where all the cool kids are.
And you want to stay in that small pond?
Yes, it works for us. Like, for me, I want to make games that I feel proud of, and I do think I would. I love the business side of things. I love contract negotiation. I love doing all of that as well. But I think I would struggle to balance making a game that I want to play, which I feel proud of, with the need to be having it targeting hundreds and hundreds of millions of people and monetizing those people. I think. I mean, we do try to approach monetization intelligently. So the game is free to download on Android, whereas it's paid on iOS. But that's because paid games never work well on Google Play. You should never do a paid game on Google Play. So we do have to adapt to the different markets, and we charge $14.99 for the game on PC, and we put a lot of effort into making the game be worth $14.99 on PC. We fully rewrote it. We added multiplayer, we added modding and content creation support. So we do try to make sure we're doing things intelligently. But I don't have you need a different skill set to really succeed in the free-to-play space, and there's a lot of people trying to do it. The mobile market is brutal regardless, but at least we're on the top of the charts on the paid side, whereas on the free side we wouldn't even get a look in. 120 million players over 7 years sounds very good, but for a free-to-play game, that's not really that good. You're not going to be writing home about that.
But do you prefer playing your own game? What is the most fun, to play it or to make it?
To make it, definitely. 100%. But I think any game designer, once you start making games, you're always going to prefer to make games than play games. Well, I do still love playing games as well. But when I play other people's games, I have a horrible tendency to just keep on wanting to make my own version of it. Then I think of all the things I could do to it. And I have a big ideas book that I write things down in, and I have to slam it shut and not think about it again, because otherwise I'm too distracted to think about things. And the distractions are very real. I think it's all too often. Smaller game developers in particular have a success, and then they go and make the next game. And actually, if you've had a successful game, I think you need to double down on that and really make it work well. After Plague Inc. came out, I wanted to make a new game 6 months later, and thank God I didn't, because if I had moved on from Plague Inc., we wouldn't be here talking now. I wouldn't have been able to maintain the momentum of Plague Inc. It's so hard to get people to download one game or one app, and if you go make another one, you've lost all the people you've already got, as opposed to keeping on developing it as a service and stuff. So that's something I reach out to lots of game developers who are making games that I like, and just say hi to them and have chats. And that's always one of the things I say to some of the studios in particular is if you've got to hit, like, focus on it. I know as an artist, as a game designer, you want to kind of go on and do the next thing, but actually sometimes doubling down on it can give you more freedom in the long term. Like, for me, like, when making Rebel Inc. was a stupid idea. Like, who would go and make a game about simulating an insurgency in Afghanistan? Like, it's not a sensible business thing to do, but because of the success of Plague Inc., we have full creative freedom. We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, and that we will take as long as we need to make the game good, to make it something we're proud of, and that happens because of the power that Plague Inc. gives us.
Did you ever struggle with doubling down on was it tempting to?
Oh yeah,
to
always.
Go forward?
I think so. With my book of ideas, I slam shut. That's how I write the idea, and then I don't think about it again. There's so many. I mean, I think ideas are never the problem. Right? We have a phrase in the office which is "ideas are bullshit." Like, everybody has ideas. The important is in implementing them and iterating them and keeping, when you get to that 99% done thing, keeping on pushing through it to make it even better when you just want to stop it and release it and you're sick of it. Like, that's the point, I think, which really gives us our edge, is that we obsess about it all the way to the end, and when we get to the end we will still obsess about it even more, and we'll rewrite something. Like we with Rebel Inc, like, we got to a week before launch and I was like, actually, you know what, I didn't like this first map, I want to change it, I don't think it's a good introduction to the game. So we suddenly did a whole new map for the first map, and it was absolutely the right call, but at the time it was exhausting. And oh God, we've got to do that. With Plague, really adding different disease types in. I added different disease types in, again, very late in the day, because they'd kind of been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back because we were busy doing other things. And then I thought, well, okay, a little part of me thinks, well, maybe I just don't need to do the different disease types. And like, no, this was part of the core vision. This is what will make it into something that is gonna be successful longer term. And it absolutely was. Thank God I did do it. But it's just fighting that tiredness, that urge, just like, oh, I just can't be bothered anymore. It's the same thing when you're sick of revising and you want to just bring on the exam at this point. I haven't got the energy to do it anymore.
Yeah. My dad always says that, like, swimmers, when they have like 10 meters left or something, they stop breathing. And they just go.
Yeah, you just go. Yeah.
It was really interesting to talking to you, and I just have one more question,
yeah, sure.
And that is, like, the listeners, if they're more interested into you, how can they follow you or listen to you?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter, and got a contact form on our website, which people can reach out to. We obviously I see most of what gets sent in, not all of it these days. But if they mention that they heard us on the podcast, it will definitely reach me. And I think, in particular, if it's anybody who's making a game that they think would be a good fit for something we do, they should definitely get in touch. Like I talk with various developers about providing financial and publishing support for games that I think are a perfect fit for our audience. To date, I've had lots of conversations. I've never actually found that perfect fit. But even so, there's quite a few people who I like to see succeed, and so I like to have chats with them. Sometimes it's good to have people just to bounce ideas off, and having a chat with someone yesterday, like, wanting to just understand a bit more about the monetization approach we take for Plague Inc, and if that could work for their game. And I think it's just, what I love about the games industry is nobody really has a fucking clue what they're doing. Everyone's making it up as they go along, and so the more people you can talk to, the more opinions you can get, the greater the chance that you might get what is necessary for your own game. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to me. And I think, if they've got games that they think are worth me looking at, intelligence,
and what's
simulation, strategy
your Twitter
games,
handle, or
if they search for Endemic Creations or
okay.
Plague Inc or something, they'll find me from there, or the contact form. Or if they think yes, they could be a good game designer to work with us, if they're junior or senior or incredibly senior game directors, like, I'm interested in all of them. If I can find the right person, I'll pay them a lot of money, and you'll get a few beers from it as well. So.
Perfect. Okay, thanks a lot, James. It was nice talking to you.
Take care. Bye.